If there is a star and producer who is adamant in making decisions that are left of the mainstream despite all the naysayers and critics being vocal about it being a bad idea, it is Aamir Khan. Every time the audience believes that he should pivot into doing something mainstream as an actor and in this case as a producer, he ends up still doing something that he instinctually creatively resonates with. It's a rarity in Hindi cinema. It's one of the main reasons why some of Aamir's recent decisions have been against the tide and slightly frustrating. The consistent feature that does exist with his association with movies, at least in the last three ventures other than Happy Patel, is that all of them are remakes. Lal Singh Chadda being a remake of Forrest Gump, Sitare Zameen Par being a remake of Championes, and now as a producer, Ek Din being a remake of the Thai film One Day. While I do find Aamir Khan's reasoning of doing remakes rather dated, always going back to how Ghajini was also a remake and did well, or that Shakespeare gets several adaptations over centuries without falling under the same purview of criticism, it's like beating a dead horse at this point of time in communicating that the audience and its viewing patterns have changed post the pandemic and they genuinely seek for more engaging and original storytelling. While I was frustrated with the teaser and trailer of Ek Din giving away almost every beat of the storytelling till the interval through its marketing material, I wanted to go with a fresh and open mind for this movie despite having seen the original film. The movie focuses on Dinesh Srivastav, played by Junaid Khan, who is a part of an IT department in a company called Mycon that is situated in Noida. I love that Noida gets so much representation in Hindi cinema lately. Alas, it's slightly embarrassing. He is besotted by Meera, played by Sai Pallavi. An ek tarfa pyar situation continues as he has noticed over several months that Meera is having an affair with the boss Nakul, played by Kunal Kapoor. A company trip takes place in Japan, specifically Hokkaido, where Dinesh asks for a wish ki Meera meri ho jaye, chahe ek din ke liye hi sahi. Several problems arise over a period of time, a snowstorm causing Meera to collapse and find herself in a hospital, where she gets to know that she has transient global amnesia. She has forgotten several events that have happened in her life, but such amnesia will only exist for one day, and the next day she will forget what happens on this very day too. Dinesh, concerned about Meera, stays back in Japan to provide her company and comfort her, posing as her boyfriend as Lady Ghajini pieces together the missing chapters of her memory. The confusion and conflict that arises as Meera puts two and two together and what eventually becomes the outcome of that one day spent together forms 75% of the premise already revealed in the trailer. Here's me telling you the good and bad aspects of the film so that you guys can ultimately decide whether to watch Ek Din in theaters or not. The good. Japan advertisement brochure. This film visually seems like a breath of fresh air, primarily because I think I and you as an audience have somewhat been frustrated with how films week in and week out just look terribly artificial. Nothing seems authentic and real anymore, and so when a movie makes the deliberate decision to shoot in real locations, especially when they are as picturesque as Hokkaido, you almost feel compelled to just soak it in for a bit. I swear to God, with all the rom-coms coming in the next few weeks, I'm kind of glad that we are getting a break from the CGI slop and can just see pretty people in pretty locations. The film, when set in India, does not specifically stand out as a state-specific story. I know goddamn well they did not shoot this movie in Noida, but this is primarily a Japan story, and the beautiful cinematography by Manoj Lobo takes us on an ANA-sponsored trip that I honestly cannot complain about. The film is set in these picturesque snow-capped mountains, the iconic monuments, lit-up streets, the supermarkets, restaurants. Everything almost compelled me to plan my revisit to Japan very soon. Even though the film does seem like a tourism pamphlet on full display, primarily doing the highlights like a montage versus really feeling like a Japan story, I still couldn't help but be slightly immersed in these two desis in this unique predicament. It's also refreshing that we have progressed from tales just being set in London, Canada or the States. Is Japan also giving rebates here? Brief moments of spark, banter and chemistry. The film is mostly dull with its storytelling, but it is not devoid of fleeting moments of cheeky banter, leaving a smile on your face as these two contrasting personalities speak to one another. Junaid as Dinesh could have easily come across as an extremely creepy character. Think about it on paper. The man appreciates and almost gawks at Meera from a distance. He says things like, "मैं एक गरीब बच्चा जैसा हूँ जो दूर से खिलौने को देख रहा है." It gives peak stalker energy, but there is this giant, awkward, endearing presence of Junaid that's disarming and safe. Meera is a people pleaser. She acknowledges everyone and gives them respect, and this leads to an interesting dynamic when they do spark up a conversation, even if it is essentially a role play and based on a lie. I was slightly worried about how the makers would treat this situation of posing as a boyfriend for one day and how from an optics POV it's just plain creepy. But the makers have really been responsible in ensuring that the dynamic doesn't come across as icky. You'll notice this from not only their interaction, but the choice the characters make in not crossing the line. Junaid is tailor-made for this role, not to sound harsh, but it's the benefits of nepotism that the character is literally an extension of Junaid, the real person. As described by Aamir in interviews, actors don't get that luxury, especially when they start out. I'll tell you why this is a problem too a little later. Sai Pallavi, however, is the highlight for me in this movie. Featuring in her Hindi film debut, she has these big expressive eyes. She maintains eye contact with her co-stars, making me almost blush in several instances, making me conclude that she can have chemistry even with an inanimate object. Seeing Sai dance is always such a pleasure, and when she, in an impromptu scene, just grooves with the performers, I could just sit there and see her perform for minutes. Meera has quirks that can easily come across as annoying and overbearing, but there is an undeniable restraint and charm to Sai that does make your heart reach out to her for the oscillating feelings she goes through. All emotions of fondness, of despair, of betrayal are brilliantly performed by Sai, despite her Tamil twang clearly evident in her dialogues, something even mentioned in the dialogues of the film. I struggle sometimes with Rashmika in Hindi movies, but for the case of Ek Din, it blended brilliantly for this film specifically. However, I get slightly worried on what such dialogue delivery does to a film like Ramayana. It could easily get slightly awkward. Both Junaid and Sai have this odd but sweet dynamic that is cheesy but does take the shape of becoming a drag by the concluding moments. Visually, they reminded me of the dynamic between Abhishek Bachchan and Rani Mukherjee, this man towering over the girl and being this awkward sweet giant with this little firecracker. For it to be memorable, however, the script needed to have more character, to be funny, to be more indulgent with its running time, to just give us more, because of which I have to talk about the underwhelming aspects. Stale writing. One of the biggest problems of the writing of a movie like Ek Din, a film directed by Sunil Panday and written by Sneha and Spandan Desai, is that it provides us a hook far too early, even before we are finally accustomed or familiar with the personalities of Dinesh and Meera. The film has a running time of 2 hours and 5 minutes, and what happens when the running time is so economical, the emotional connection we have to the characters becomes slightly distant, because the film is almost on a mission to reach its several main chapters quickly, then take a breather, and trusting its material and its actors. We are not given enough time individually with these two. They also become staple caricatures than people we know living in our own circles. You also have this verbose storytelling sprinkled in its initial moments, where Junaid is doing an observational voiceover and acting out what he is thinking about, but this storytelling tool is abandoned versus something that stays consistent. Say in a movie like Dil Dhadakne Do with the character of Pluto. The writing has moments that makes you chuckle and smile, but it lacks character to be a tale that will be remembered for weeks to come. Random abrupt decisions. What's also rather odd about this movie is that it is adamant that the film breaks stereotypical norms of commercial cinema. This is presented through the montage of iconic hero entries in the introduction. You get everything from SRK in Mehuna, Hrithik in War, even Tiger Shroff from Heropanti, to showcase Junaid as a leading man as a contrast, that we are used to watching heroes have these stylized entries, but our leading man here is this awkward giant who is different. And while I am all for such diversity of the kind of lead characters we get to see in films, the movie, in an odd situation, presents Dinesh in this heroic act of saving a Japanese kid from a running car. So the same character, who is this underconfident introvert who freezes whenever someone addresses him, suddenly gets these superhero-like abilities. It almost seemed like a complete disregard for how the character was written and presented to us. What's also very distracting, and I know I should not talk about the looks of individuals, but Dinesh's character keeps on describing himself as this loser punching above his weight, that people like Meera don't hang out with people like him. And even though this is an extension of how Dinesh internally feels, I just could not be convinced that this 6'2" Desi Henry Cavill looking man is speaking to a girl and describing her being out of his league. You know, you provide me the sharp contrast of Uday Chopra hitting on Priyanka Chopra in Pyar Impossible, and I'll be convinced that it is impossible. Here in this case, I just could not relate to the fact that the makers were adamant in wanting to double down and make us believe that Junaid is punching above his weight, and this makes me come to a conclusion: the contrast of performances. This is a movie that Aamir Khan believes could have been a great debut for Junaid Khan, and the more I think about this movie, the more I believe that this could have been Junaid's Jaane Tu Ya Jaane Na. Even though the movie pales in comparison to the whimsical and effective character of the 2008 movie, I understand on how this would have been the ideal first impression with the audience. Junaid is described as awkward, getting into odd details, being slightly socially inept, and Dinesh is all these things, which are endearing. And for this to be the audience's first impression with Junaid, I think would have benefited the film largely. But what I realize is that one cannot coast through by merely being cast as yourself, something that is happening with an actor like Ananya Pandey Panday, whose characters are intentionally tailor-made to what she knows as her reality. Junaid fits perfectly as the awkward introvert in this movie, but what it made me realize is that this is precisely who he is and why he is limited slightly as an actor. When Junaid lip syncs in Ek Din, it has this awkward energy, as if the character is not meant to do these stereotypical Bollywood tropes. It fits well for Dinesh, but because Junaid has been exposed for his limited range in a movie like Love Yapa, you realize that some technical details are just not in the DNA of a few actors. Because in Love Yapa, he plays a character who is confident and entitled. Junaid, however, has this same awkward body language in executing the art of song, dance, and lip sync in Love Yapa too. When you see both Junaid and Sai, you see a contrast in the hold that they have on their craft. An actor still coming to terms with his strengths and weaknesses, and an actor who is just supremely confident, vulnerable, and bare in front of camera. Junaid may evolve into a very mature performer, but this is a luxury that only a few possess in this industry. The film progresses into becoming slightly tiring as the concluding moments roll, and for those who have seen the original film, this is not a unique experience provided by the Hindi adaptation. The writers have also changed what was one of my favorite elements of the original film, an ending that I felt was so poetic and deep that it elevated the movie for me beyond it just being a generic romantic film. In the Hindi version, the makers played really safe with their climax, and what's hilarious is that the same generic tropes of Hindi cinema that they were critical of initially, they end up becoming the stereotype themselves, making a film that could have been cheesy and worth your time in cinemas to become extremely mediocre and forgettable. And that was a video, guys. Write down in the comments below what you thought about Ek Din. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram. The handle is right in front of you. Follow me at JammyPants4. Also, please support us by smashing the like button and subscribing to our channel for weekly content ahead. Thank you for watching.